Greetings and welcome to the Mount Rushmore podcast. This is what will be the second in our holiday podcast, or at least our December podcast. But really the first one that's really kind of getting us into the holiday season. My name's Jeff, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friends Richard.
Hello, it's a December to remember, everybody.
And Michael.
Howdy.
Richard and Michael, they debate and deliberate the most ubiquitous aspects of many topics, and this time around they are debating the Mount Rushmore of weird things about Christmas. But we have a weird Christmas aficionado, if not expert, to debate them on, and this is Craig Brewer of the Weird Christmas podcast. How are you, sir?
I am great. How are you guys?
Oh, very, very good. Craig, I discovered your podcast last holiday season, and I've always been a fan of the holiday and always thought it was kind of sensed it to be a mishmash of bizarre things that didn't necessarily go together, that were coming together in a kind of a fun and weird way. But
you're right.
And I'm right. So, well, tell me more about why is Christmas weird?
For the reasons you just said, it's a mishmash of all kinds of things. And anybody who tells you that they're going to get back to the heart of it doesn't know what they're talking about, because there is no heart of it. There's just a whole bunch of things that over mainly 2,000 years, but actually 1,000 years before that, things just started to accrue to all kinds of winter celebrations. And yeah, it's all a big mess. I mean, all the things that just about anyone in any culture thinks is very traditional for Christmas is actually something that probably got mistranslated from some other, part of the world or other country or something and became normal. So I got all into the history, and what's fun about the history is that none of the traditions are traditional. So everything has sort of a fun story of how it got to be there. And that's what I'm into.
Well, aficionados of Christmas who kind of want their mind blown, and maybe I think it's like Mark Twain said about travel. You after you travel, you are more wise but less happy. Like you see you see things about the world that might be a little bit challenging and hard to reconcile with the world that you thought existed, but you're wiser for it. Those people who visit the Weird Christmas website or the podcast can experience recent episodes. December 4th, he dropped Weird Christmas Food with Glenn Warren of Seasons Eatings podcast. What are some other recent episodes?
We did a whole one on, there's a book that came about a year ago that's probably, to my mind, the best history of Santa Claus, because he tries to trace everything about not just Santa, but every gift-giving figure in the world, mainly the Western world, but a lot of people will tell you the simple story about, like, oh yeah, there used to be this St. Nicholas guy, and then over time he just kind of got secularized, and that's how we have Santa now, and that story is just wrong. And so he is the only one who's actually taken the time to go back and do serious academic, what some people are going to find tedious, but really, thoroughly footnoted and documented research on literally everything that we can say with any confidence about the history of Santa Claus for the last 2,000 to 3,000 years.
Wow.
And it's great. It's an amazing book. I mean, it's not, I even say in the show, this is not a coffee table Santa book with lots of cute pictures. I mean, this is something where he's going to, spend a few pages of footnotes sort of laying out the documents of where things go. But it's nice too, because he's collected everything that I think we can know right now, and it's just this amazing project. And he did it just because he had a collection of Santa figurines and wanted to write a book about how to be a collector. Decided he'd write the first chapter on the history of Santa Claus, realized he had about 200 pages, and was like, okay, I guess this is a book of its own. But anyway, just fascinating guy. So we did that. Had a whole show on Krampus that came out on Halloween with the guy who wrote the definitive book on Krampus, named Al Reidenauer. His book on Krampus is just a beautiful thing. Like, he's actually traveled to Germany, took pictures of all kinds of Krampus runs and the costumes and all kinds of things. But it's just, again, a really huge history of the project. And that was fun. So those are the couple of the recent ones.
Well, that's a lot of fun. Christmas at the Natural History Museum and Mumblecore Christmas with Stephanie Davis. Those sound like really
yeah, I do. I try to find odd bits of Christmas media every year. Ever since I've gotten into this, I've gotten deep into the world of people who love Christmas music and spend their lives hunting for some of the strangest stuff. And there's a whole world of people who make annual Christmas mixes, and it's all about trying to find the strangest, most unusual tracks that nobody else can find and sharing those every year. And it's fun. I mean, honestly, one of the things I really like about this is that I just really enjoy getting into something where you can dive down that rabbit hole and just keep going. And so many people who are into Christmas stuff have like one really narrow little slice that they just fully commit themselves to. Like I know one guy who does nothing but collect Hawaiian Christmas music. Like he's not from Hawaii.
Yeah.
He has no connection to it, but that's just what he decides he likes. And he's got, thousands of albums and old 45s that had like 50 presses, and he'll find them and collect them. And that kind of personality just always fascinated me.
Well, I have to admit, I think I discovered your podcast through the Fa La 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 website or blog of holiday music. I also, I think I was sitting at the Enchanted Tiki Room attraction at Disneyland Resort and looking around and observing that Polynesian pop culture is a combination of it's kind of a mishmash and mix-up of multiple belief systems, tokens from those belief systems, such as tiki or totems and things like that. And then celebration, imbibing in beverages and food, and it's a big goofy mix-up of all of this different stuff that sometimes and it works for a lot of people.
Yeah.
They're very entertained by it.
Yeah.
Richard and Michael, you're both okay. Richard now is unmuted, but Michael is muted. Okay, cool. You're both unmuted. Okay, so awesome. Let's jump right into it. I appreciate you being here, and we're going to plug your podcast and the site. People can find more information about you throughout the show. But the topic is weird things about Christmas, and our guest is usually the person who goes first, and we'll keep to that tradition as we hear about other crazy traditions. So give us your first choice, Craig Brewer of the Weird Christmas podcast.
All right. Well, first of all, I should say, trying to find the Mount Rushmore of weird things, it's a little weird because you're like, okay, the most popular weird things, or are we going for like the full-on strangest odd things I could come up with? So I went for more of the stranger things that people may not be aware of. So we'll start with Christmas mushrooms.
Whoa. Okay.
I think I've done those before. Yeah.
Well, honestly, you may have. So there's a theory. This actually got really popular probably because of Joe Rogan and his site. He had talked about this a while back. But there's actually been a theory for a long time that a lot of the Santa Claus imagery comes from a Siberian mushroom cult, basically. That there are these shaman and this is all true. Every part I'm going to tell you all about is real true. So there's a shaman culture that dresses in red coats with often white fur and things like that. And what they do during the winter is they go out and collect these mushrooms that are called Amanita muscaria. And you've probably seen them before. They're little red mushrooms with white dots. A lot of the times, especially in Europe, it's a really common Christmas and New Year decoration, these little mushrooms. And you'll see them in like fairy tales and gnomes and stuff like that. It's kind of the iconic little mushroom. Anyway, they're hallucinogenic. And the shaman, of course, would eat them. And they would go on magic trips. So that's part of the thing that started getting people thinking about this. Well, there's other connections to it. This is also a place where reindeer are the main pack animal. And the reindeer will wander around and they devour the mushrooms. It's common food for them. And most of those mushrooms grow underneath evergreen trees. Like there's a little symbiotic relationship. So most of them are going to grow either in or on the tree, kind of like little presents. And the shaman will actually sometimes, because of the reindeer, what they'll do is they'll collect the yellow snow, because when it passes through the reindeer, a lot of the toxins that make you nauseous and whatnot, that they're cleaned out. And so they'll just eat the yellow snow and you get the straight hallucinogen. And then on top of that, a lot of times, sometimes since this happens in winter, they're living in yurts and whatnot that are surrounded by snow, and they have to climb down through the opening in the top of the yurt, pretty much like coming down the chimney, and then they come in and do their little the ceremony or whatever it is. Okay, so all of that is actually true. But what's happened now is, of course, tons of people have latched onto that and been like, wow, there's so many things about that that's connected to Santa Claus. That has to be part of the reason why all the Santa imagery is like it is. That would explain the reindeer. That would explain, why you have presents underneath a tree. Santa Claus is wearing basically the same kind of costumes that they wear. And there are pictures on the internet that actual people have gone and taken pictures of these folk, and they're red and white, big coats and whatnot. But yeah, so there's a whole sort of subculture of people trying to make this connection, and actually a lot of, tenured archaeologists and other scholars have tried to actually trace this connection to say that maybe some of that stuff got filtered through Northern European icons, and is why the mushrooms are still a popular popular symbol of luck and of the new year in Europe, and maybe part of why Santa Claus looks like he is. That maybe what's happening every month or every year is we're slightly replaying a shamanic celebration.
Wow. Holy bananas. That is something trippy. I've never heard anything about that.
That's not just me. Like I said, Joe Rogan got a hold of that. And after he did that some 10 years ago, you can find all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I've got a little video on YouTube of it. You can just search for it's on my website too, just because that's such good clickbait stuff. I had to make one by myself. So so that's one that's out there.
That is pretty cool. I think there's a lot of trippy psychedelic stuff about Christmas when you think about it. And there's a lot of, as with any kind of fairy tales and holiday things, there's a lot of or things that are related to religion, whether it be Christianity or pagan or whatever. Mm-hmm. There's so much faith and magic that's involved in it, and that things like magical pixie dust exist certainly in places like Disneyland, and things like magical hallucinogenic mushrooms don't seem like they're too far from that.
Oh yeah, and especially for anyone who wants to get back to we're going to do the pagan roots of Christmas. That's obviously a fun way to do it.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Super popular theory. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not, I guess, too far from going to visit your relatives and getting baked with your cousins outside. Right. Yeah. All right, Richard and Michael. I don't know if you can top mushrooms, but go for it.
Yeah, I think we're pretty screwed already.
I'm not sure. I'll be the lamb to the slaughter, and I'll go first for us if you don't mind, Richard.
Go for it.
But this is something that kind of Craig brought up just a few minutes ago with Christmas music. And for one, Richard, I'll give him and his wife credit. For many years, they made the exact type of mix CD Christmas album that you mentioned.
Cool.
Just totally full of just wonderful Christmas songs. Some stuff was very classic, and some stuff is very new and also weird. But what I found, one of the weirdest things at Christmas is new pop artists or rock artists making new Christmas songs, or re-recording old Christmas songs. And I find it so just wonderful and strange and weird that there is just this industry that they're just still putting them out. They still come out every year. There's some, there are new people making, very serious artists also going in and just LCD Sound System comes out with a new Christmas song, or Bright Eyes has a Christmas song, or even Spinal Tap, who are silly and whatever from the 80s with Christmas with the Devil, and just the wonderful collection of just Christmas music from I mean, Spinal Tap notwithstanding, from like serious artists, I think is so strange. And obviously it harkens back to, songs coming out from, like Bing Crosby back in the day when they're, and, even like Elvis with his Christmas songs. And it's just such a wonderful, strange tradition that I'm just always delighted by it.
My favorite, by the way, is the Killers, who had a stretch from like 2010 to 2000 or 2006 to like 2016, when they put out a different Christmas song every year, and they totally committed to the song because they're the Killers and there's no irony involved in them as a band. They just totally buy into whatever they're selling that year. And actually, I should point out that they have now packaged all of those Christmas singles into an album that's just this year is now available on streaming services. So if you want to hear some Killers doing a bunch of weird Christmas songs, originals, do it. Listen,
Michael, what is weird about it to you? Because I can imagine if you're a band called The Killers, or if you are the Sex Pistols, or you're even like The Boss, and you release, the posture of pop music and rock doesn't seem to have room in it for the childlike wonder of Christmas. Is that what's bizarre about it? Or is it as bizarre as if, like, if these guys all of a sudden put out an Easter record, everybody'd be like, what the hell? What?
Arbor Day, what the fuck?
Arbor Day?
I think that there is like a self-seriousness of rock musicians that doesn't necessarily lay into what Christmas is, which is, or what Christmas is often kind of presented at, which is like either a very joyous thing or a very solemn thing. But obviously there's so much room under the, under the proverbial Christmas tree for all this sort of stuff. But yeah, I think it's when a serious band puts out something that is just like, I don't know, just ridiculous and Christmassy.
One of the things that I have, why I've learned from Craig's podcast, and my, I read a book called The Battle for Christmas a few years ago, and there are things that Christmas, there are things that are part of the experience that we relate to the tradition of Christmas that weren't there 5 years ago, that weren't there 30 years ago. That and there are some songs. It's almost like the audacity that somebody has as a performing artist to create a piece of music that enters into the canon and pantheon, or I guess it's not a pantheon, but it's the identity of the tradition of Christmas. Almost seems like so audacious. But I forget that, like Frosty the Snowman didn't exist, always, or Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer didn't exist always.
Yeah, and Rudolph was put out by a department store.
Was it Montgomery Ward's?
Montgomery Ward's, yeah. Yep.
So funny. It does seem like audacious. Like, here's this thing that is Jesus adjacent that somebody could just pick up a piano and write.
Oh yeah, I mean, people joke about Mariah Carey's song every year, but that thing is now immortal, right? I mean, that one Mariah Carey song is never going away.
She now has an Apple TV Christmas special that is coming out this year, which I just learned about.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it's the fact that she could actually pull it off. I mean, like, part of the reason you see so many people do that is the hope that maybe they can do that. Because, of course, if you happen to be one of the rare few who actually land something that does that, I mean, you're set. I mean, she could never do anything else again for the rest of her life. And that one song, despite residuals for anything else, she, still be one of the richest musical artists out there. Yeah, so I mean, that's one thing that leads so many people to either try themselves or be forced to try, or I've even heard of people having that written into their contract that, once you start to get with a major label, especially if you're going to be one of the big top 40 types, there's going to be a Christmas song written into your contract somewhere. Just sort of on the lottery of the off chance that maybe we do this, because it's something that you make and it can get played year after year. It's not dependent on your current album or your current tour.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Which is awkward if you're Jewish.
I was gonna mention the Neil Diamond or the Barbra Streisands of the entertainment world.
Right. Some of the ones that are like a lot of like White Christmas, and a bunch of those were written or co-written, by Jewish artists too. Yeah.
Or is it Berlin? Is White Christmas?
Yeah.
Berlin?
Yeah.
One of the fascinating aspects of we can dig into this stuff later, but Richard and it seems like we bring up Elvis Presley and Colonel Tom Parker whenever he fits into any category. And
right.
I think Elvis was forced to cut a Christmas song while doing his comeback special. He was trying to get away from the corny stuff, and the Colonel made him do a Christmas song just because he's just printing money. Okay, dudes.
I will say, just on that, I have to give one of my friends a plug. There's a friend of mine, Jim, runs a site called Christmas Underground. And what he actually looks for are people who are sort of in that situation, but who actually manage to write really sincere new Christmas songs, like not just to do a cover, but his whole thing is actually tracking down actual Christmas music that you would really want to listen to.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's to the point where he trolls Bandcamp and SoundCloud and all these things, and finds things that maybe they might not get any other exposure if he hadn't been looking for them. But he finds some of these like amazing pieces of music that, I mean, run the gamut from like protest songs to emo stuff to little folk pieces to full on, whatever. But it's just amazing the number of people who actually are out there trying to make Christmas songs that aren't schlock at all. And
that's wonderful.
And yeah, he's found things that just blow my mind. Just because it's good Christmas music.
Well, that's really cool.
Don't expect it.
Well, I want to keep going with the picks, but obviously when we talk about, let's say, a concept as big as the American democracy or the idea of America, people have these assumptions and they use them. They build entire careers and belief systems off of these assumptions of what America is and who an American is and what Americans should be doing at any given time. And they're so often completely historically inaccurate. they're not just ideologically wrong or ideologically isolated to a certain spectrum of the population, but they're historically inaccurate to what this country was founded on and the deviant practices that even created this country. So also Christmas as a concept, you could write a song about. It seems like one of the reasons maybe for the timeless endurance of the Charlie Brown Christmas special is that it's some of the music there and tapped into the malaise and melancholy of the season and the sadness and the loneliness and isolation that people feel this time of year.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think you're absolutely right.
All right, Craig, what is your next choice for the Mount Rushmore of weird things about Christmas?
All right. I will go to what is actually probably the most traditional thing that I do, but it's Christmas postcards, Christmas cards.
Oh, cool.
And so actually on social media, the thing that got me actually started in this whole thing was I got interested in old Victorian Christmas cards because they just printed thousands and thousands and thousands of these different things. But the demand for them was so high that they would just print anything and slap Merry Christmas on it, basically. And I truly mean anything. So the whole, and that was what happened. The quick little history here. So the penny post in England started. It was the first time that you could mail something for just a penny, and it was super cheap. And a couple people realized, hey, if we just make these little cards, people can send them to each other, especially Christmas was kind of getting popular again. And they're like, this is a great way to do stuff. Postcards were already popular because, I mean, this was before Instagram. So the way that you kind of get eye candy, cheap eye candy, was often through postcards. And so people wouldn't throw their postcards away. They'd actually keep whole books of all the postcards they got. So Christmas postcards became like a hugely popular thing, because it was a good time, a good excuse just to start to send everybody a note or a card or something. So anyway, they made tons of these things. And a few years ago, I found this book called Christmas Curiosities by a historian who collects what's called ephemera, which basically means any paper stuff that's meant to be thrown away, like tickets or bookmarks or postcards or brochures or whatever. But in the course of all of his collections, he had found these amazingly strange Victorian Christmas cards that at that time, it was still before they had solidified what Christmas imagery was supposed to be like. Like, it didn't have to have Santa Claus on it. And there was no sort of limited set of Christmas imagery. So a ton of these postcards would be about just totally surreal things. Like, for example, the one I share every year that is shared more than anywhere else, I call it Frog Murder Christmas. But what it is it's one frog running away from another frog he's obviously just stabbed. And these are like realistic looking frogs, by the way. These are not cartoons. These realistic looking frogs, as if one has just killed another one and run away with his money. And he's taken off. And underneath it just says, "A Merry Christmas to you." And that's it. That's the card. So, and I, of course, at first I'm like flipping through this guy's book and I'm like, these things can't be real. But you look into it, and yeah, they totally are. So there's this whole world of insane postcards. And what I started doing was I just made copies of everything in that book, and then I started collecting some on my own because, honestly, it's not that hard to find. You go sort of look in the back corners of a local antique store, and you're going to find a box of postcards, and you can find some weird ones in there. So I started collecting these things and found other collectors, and then just started looking online. And now I've got a collection of thousands of the strangest, most surreal images. And all year long, well, especially during the season, I share a whole bunch every day on social media. And it's sort of because that was popular enough. One day I decided, hey, why don't I try a podcast thing? Because the website I was making had a blank space for a podcast. And I'm like, why not? And that was pretty much it. But it was the cards that got me into it. So surreal Victorian postcards are sort of the thing that's still what I love about this, because I love the idea that people were very sincerely sending cards that would have, say, Santa Claus getting rolled up into a snowball, or another one that's a lot of people seem to like this year. There's one where a cop has fallen in the ice, on some thin ice, and instead of helping him, two little kids come up and start throwing snowballs at him. And
Wow.
All it says is, Merry Christmas, and that's it. But there's like thousands and thousands of these things, and they were incredibly common.
Wow.
And so the surreal Victorian postcards are the origin of everybody sort of having to do that horrible ritual of filling out, all the postcards this year. But they used to be a whole lot more fun.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a lot of fun. Do you find certain genres? Are there certain genres of them? Or there are some?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, there's all kinds. I mean, like, and they were done in series too, which was kind of fun. Like, there would be, so the idea behind the series would be like, hopefully you'd have enough friends who would send it to you so you could get a whole story. It'd be like maybe 8 postcards, and if you get all of them, then they tell you a story, and that's a fun way to get them to sell more and other people to buy more and whatnot. But yeah, so I've done whole. And some of the themes that show up are very strange. Like for Thanksgiving, there's all these things of like little kids riding turkeys, which is a little odd. There are candle people where they're on fire, but they seem just fine. There's pine cone people. There's the other one that is absolutely strange, are dead bird cards. And I mean literally this, like there'll literally be a picture of a dead robin, and underneath it says Merry Christmas. And there's all this discussion on the internet about why this was actually a theme, because it's not just a one-off theme. Like I have, that's my one thing right now, is to find as many of these as I can. And I think right now I've got 11 of them. From different publishers. It's not like one series, but these things were from different publishers, different birds, but it's literally, and it's not like I'm interpreting it as dead. I mean, it is obviously dead. And And there's no other caption on it than Happy New Year or compliments of the season. And there's all kinds of theories of why this was. But yeah, dead birds. Merry Christmas.
I think that there is an element of, in the Victorian era, that was really the first era of mass production.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't quite know what to do with mass production.
Yeah.
Like they hadn't sorted out commerce yet.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just throwing literally everything at a wall to see what sticks.
Oh, yeah.
And if it's dead birds, hey, maybe people love dead birds. Let's try it.
Yep, absolutely. And some of them are obviously done. Like there are versions of them that obviously have a blank space and they'll print different messages on it. Like I've got copies of one that say Merry Christmas, but then it'll say Happy Birthday and, Happy Valentine's Day or whatever. And other times where there are cards that just have literally nothing to do with Christmas, and they'll find some place. Like my favorite ones are just like random animals or something. And they'll just find a place on a piece of wood somewhere to very inexpertly sort of write in compliments of the season or Merry Christmas or whatever. So obviously what they were doing was just taking any image that they had, and they knew they'd sell at Christmas, and just turning it into a Christmas card just by throwing it out there. So, it makes for a good joke now of, what does this have to do with Christmas? And even to them, it didn't have anything to do with Christmas. And for them at the time, just getting the images was fun because, it was literally, a good way to distract yourself was to go grab your collection of a few hundred, maybe 1,000 postcards and flip through them again. That's your eye candy.
Yeah.
For the day. Yeah.
Yeah. The postcard element, it not being necessarily what I think of as a greeting card format, I guess it would be 4 sides at minimum and in an envelope. It does seem like it is a very reductive format that's almost akin to like a meme now. If you're scrolling through, Reddit or Imgur or any social media, and I can imagine when viewed 100 years from now, how many of these memes are anyone going to understand? What do they mean?
Yeah,
they've become absent from their original inspiration. So.
I've got a 13-year-old, and I don't understand most of the memes that are happening today. So,
yeah. Oh God. Okay, well that's really fascinating. Richard and Michael, what do you got?
Hey Jeff.
Yes, sir.
Happy St. Nicholas Day.
What?
Yeah, it is
today.
It is St. Nicholas Day in the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Flanders region of France.
Oh dear, I did not know that.
Yeah,
cool.
The 6th is Nicholas's Saint Day. Yep.
Yeah, it is. And I bring this up because our second choice is the patron saint, or the figure behind St. Nicholas Day, Sinterklaas.
Okay.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Sinterklaas at all. I assume Craig has probably heard the story before.
I just know that name or that word from the Miracle on 34th Street when the Santa's speaking to the Dutch girl.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it is a really weird kind of, I don't want to say perversion on the St. Nicholas story, but it's kind of weird.
Oh, okay.
St. Nicholas was the Sinterklaas is actually based on St. Nicholas, who was a bishop of Turkey. In the Netherlands and Belgium, these other regions, they celebrate Sinterklaas as someone who dresses up in very bishop-like outfit. I don't know that he's necessarily referred to as a bishop, but it's very bishop-esque. And he comes every year to the Netherlands, for example, by boat a few days before St. Nicholas Day from Spain. And it's a little unclear exactly why Spain. There's a few kind of sort of academic arguments about why Spain. And his job is to give presents to the good girls and boys. So far, totally normal. This is a complete, this is far within the realm of the St. Nicholas stories. The issue is that his helper is not an elf. but it's a person named Zwarte Piet, which translates to Black Pete, who is, and I'm quoting from Wikipedia here because, of course, I would be, who is a helper dressed in Moorish attire and blackface. And if you get a chance to see a photo of it, it is basically Othello in blackface. That's what this is. And he is his helper. And traditionally, he would carry a birch rod, and he would use that to spank children who had been naughty.
Mm-hmm.
And in older Sinterklaas songs, they would even tell of Black Pete sweeping up naughty children in his bag and taking them back to Spain.
Wow, that's intense.
It's a little hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
Being
now, if that's
versus being given like a lump of coal.
Right. By the way, if the guy in blackface is disturbing enough as it is, imagine entire parades of white Dutch people all in blackface wandering through the town. Yeah. So, yeah, Zwarte Piet is an ongoing controversy.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's something within the last
Just to put it mildly. Yeah.
Yeah, within the last decade, there's been a lot of conversation about Zwarte Piet, whether or not this is something that is racist or not. There was a survey in 2008 where about 80 to 88% of the Dutch public did not perceive him as racist, but there have been movements in the media to sort of show him as basically as a white person with some soot on his face because he's climbing through chimneys to get to kids to help give out the presents.
I wonder if there's any statues that will be torn down. Whenever something seems bizarre, I try to kind of find a parallel that doesn't seem so bizarre for me. And like you said, the lump of coal, or my mom would often in late November, early December, leverage a fake call to Santa Claus to get us to get in line. So there was definitely, our home. There was corporal punishment in our home via spankings, and there was definitely the threat of removal of Christmas and if we did not behave. So is that kind of what that is?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think there's an element of good cop, bad cop happening here.
Mm-hmm.
The children will leave their shoes out for Sinterklaas.
Yeah.
And if they're good, he will leave candy in their shoes.
Yeah.
And if they're bad, there's a chance they may get kidnapped and shanghaied out to Spain.
Wow. I do wonder which, I'm not theology knowledgeable at all, but the idea of the invention of the devil and the invention of and the rise of so it almost seems like anytime somebody wants to get behind the concept of a deity, somebody down the road always throws a bad guy in there. Do you think they both came out about it at the same time?
Yeah. It's all part and parcel of the same kind of concept.
Yeah,
and as Craig said, I mean they broadcast the arrival of Sinterklaas and Black Pete every year on Dutch television.
Mm-hmm.
He usually arrives at a port. It's a different port every year in the Netherlands, and it's basically like from what I can gather, their Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's like their big deal, like how Santa shows up at the end of the Macy's parade, and you're like, all right, now it's Christmas season or whatever. It's kind of like that. Yeah. Yeah, and Zwarte Piet is part of this long tradition. In Europe, St. Nicholas always had, they'll call him an evil helper or sort of a punisher figure. Krampus is like that. Germany had a guy named Knecht Ruprecht. In the U.S., we have Santa, and Santa will either, right, like he'll judge you naughty or nice, right? Like you either get presents or you get coal. In Europe, it was more, is St. Nick going to talk to you, or is the bad guy going to talk to you? And that was kind of the thing, because partly since you had a saint, like Nicholas was a saint, then the saint wasn't supposed to be doing mean things to you, right? You literally have the good cop and the bad cop. And so it's like, which one's going to pay more attention to me, the good guy or the bad guy? And Sort of Pete is one version of that came. Although over time, he's just kind of in their legends. He's rarely is he the threatening guy anymore. I mean, I think especially once people kind of got wind of, oh, we're just saying there's this little Moorish kid here. He's not really a monster. We probably shouldn't just have the black guy be the bad guy. And
Right.
So now Sort of Pete is like his helper. Like he's the one who'll climb down the chimney and leave the gifts, and he does the work. And that's, so some defenders will say, yeah, he's black, not because he's a Moor, not because he's from Africa, but because he's all sooty, which
Right.
doesn't fly. And it's also not right, because in all the histories and in the books that kind of made him famous, no, he's totally his servant, and in some cases his slave. So, yeah, it's a mess, and it's kind of funny. In the Netherlands now, they the big cities will not. They really play down Pete, and they'll do things like for a while they tried like, well, there's purple Pete and green Pete, and it was all about like, let's just have him be some other color. And then I think now, like in Amsterdam, the official guy is gonna definitely be a white guy who just has some smudges on his face, like he's just dirty. So they're very aware of it. But then the far right version, the far right political folk definitely want him to be the old traditional thing. And it's funny, I've written one of my wife's best friends is Dutch, and so we've spent some time over there, and I've gotten a lot of good Zwart Piet, stuff, just fun things, because you can find them everywhere. But I've written some pieces about him, and every year I have to delete I don't know how many comments of just angry people who are like, don't talk about things you have no idea about.
No.
And it's all that kind of thing. So yeah, it's definitely part of the culture war that's going on in the Netherlands.
That's
right
not
now.
great.
Yeah.
The one thing, this is sort of tangential, but in doing the research about Sinterklaas, I didn't know a lot about the St. Nicholas tradition going way back.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize that part of the reason that chocolate coins are given out, or coins are given out in general, is that St. Nicholas apparently had thrown coins into the windows of 3 child prostitutes,
Mm-hmm.
so that they could pay off their dowry and no longer have to be prostitutes.
Yep.
That is wild to me.
Yeah. So if you're getting back to like actual St. Nicholas, who is a real, I mean, on the rolls of the medieval Catholic Church, one of the first miracles supposedly he did. And by the way, he's a Turkish guy. So the original St. Nicholas was supposed to be from Turkey, from the city of Myrna in Turkey. But yeah, the first sort of big legend about him was that there was a man who had 3 daughters, and he was so poor he was basically going to have to sell them into prostitution. And for each of 3 nights, Santa Claus or St. Nicholas would throw a bag of gold in to the guy's door, in order to keep one daughter out. And then finally he ended up, paying basically the dowry of what the girl was worth or something like that. And he would throw the dowry in. So 3 nights, so that the girls didn't have to go into prostitution. And that's one of the first, great deeds of St. Nicholas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yep. And there's more. Actually, there's a better one. I don't know if you guys were going to talk about it. There's a better story about the pickle barrels. Or were you guys going?
No,
Okay.
please.
So this is my favorite one about St. Nicholas, was that supposedly he was traveling at one point, and there was an evil innkeeper, and the innkeeper had I forget the reason. There was a bunch of reasons depending on the story, but he had basically chopped up some boys who wouldn't leave him alone, or who bothered him or stole from him or something. And I think it was 3 different boys, and he just threw their remains in a pickle barrel. And St. Nicholas stopped at this inn and knew something was wrong, and the guy was trying to cheat him and overcharge him or something like that. And so the miracle, though, that St. Nicholas did was he went over to the pickle barrels, and he made the boys come back to life out of the pickle barrels. So sometimes St. Nicholas is connected to either pickle imagery or whatever, but it's the reason he became Santa Claus too was because he saved children in that legend and in the legend of the three daughters who were going to have to become prostitutes. So little boys and girls, he found they were in bad straits and did something to help them out. But no, I love the idea that he somehow magically put little dismembered little boys back together. And the other odd thing about that is that the first follower of Saint Nicholas who had to go around and do with him was actually apparently that innkeeper who had said his punishment for that was he would have to go with Saint Nicholas from now on. But he was going to be the bad guy. He was going to be the one who would have to punish the bad children. So Nicholas did the good things, and this guy who, naturally chopped up little boys and threw them in pickle barrels was the one who would spank you if you were bad.
Wow.
Yeah. So Saint history is very odd.
All of this has almost feels like Michael, if this was a comic book, would this be Image Comics? Would this be McFarlane's? Like
Dark Horse?
Dark Horse.
I'm pretty sure this is some god awful Rob Liefeld creation.
Yeah.
This guy doesn't have feet, but he has spikes and he has pouches to hold all of his weapons. And let's throw in a bionic arm as well. You know what? Three bionic arms because why not?
Because why not? Well, some of the description, I want to get to our halftime and move on because I just love this topic and I love hearing you guys share about it. The idea of Christmas and who gets to enjoy it to the fullest. What I love is that, like Halloween, it seems like it's been okay in the last 50 years for adults to really just go hog wild and be crazy at Halloween and Christmas. It's kind of not just for kids anymore. It feels like, but it does seem like the holiday had its origins before the idea of childhood was actually if not a concept, then these, that there was a time in which young people should not be doing heavy labor and we're not just small versions of adults, because obviously if Saint Nicholas has to rescue them from prostitution, then unfortunately, good. Okay, well, hey, why don't we get into our halftime? And this is the time where I implore you, the listener, to go to the place that you find podcasts, where you found this podcast, and download, rate, and review past episodes of the Mount Rushmore podcast. You can also get into the conversation about future topics by going to our social media handles, which include Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So search for Mount Rushmore podcast and you'll find us. You'll find some other schmucks that made a Mount Rushmore podcast too, unfortunately. And they've been hiring big shot comedians, I think, to be on their podcast.
You know where you won't find us is Parler.
But yeah, Parler.
Look for us, don't find us.
Yeah, don't find us.
We're not there.
But you could also have a great time by going to the Weird Christmas website and following up on all of the things you can do and see and enjoy there. And Craig is going to tell you more about that.
Yeah, so weirdchristmas.com is sort of the hub, but the podcast is any podcast app you like. You can hear that. I only put them out during the holidays, so around October-ish through mid-January. I still subscribe to the idea that I don't like Christmas to end on Christmas Day, so I keep it going through Epiphany, which is technically like early January, but I usually, because I'm lazy and haven't edited everything, I put them out still mid-January. But there's not an overwhelming amount because I only do it, like, I don't do it year round. So there's plenty of podcasts there. But then if you're interested in those postcards that I put out, I've started doing everything from Halloween up through Valentine's Day. I hunt down the strangest old vintage postcards I can and sort of queue them up to go all the time on social media. And you can pick your poison there. Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, Instagram. Instagram's irritating because you have to like manually upload things. Like I haven't found a good like automatic way to do stuff. And when you're posting hundreds of cards, Instagram's kind of irritating. But I'm on there. But yeah, Twitter and Tumblr and Facebook. I like right now, I think it's set to do 15 cards scattered throughout the day, and I try to find the strangest ones that I can. And it's a lot of fun. A lot of people commenting on them and trying to figure out where they came from or what they might mean originally. Yeah, but that and the podcast, that's what I'm doing.
Well, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh, one thing, if you don't mind me saying, my favorite thing out of all of this that I've started doing was I decided to, 2 years ago on a whim, I thought to myself, it'd be really cool if I could go out and find a whole bunch of strange, weird Christmas short stories to have. And then I figured out it'd be a lot easier if I just had other people write them for me. And a great way to do that would be to start a little contest. So for a few years now, I've done a flash fiction contest where people write just weird Christmas stories. And it's actually amazing, the amount of stuff that people write. I mean, I get hundreds of entries every year, and I read or I don't read them. I have all authors and other people read them every year for one episode that usually comes out right around Christmas. But it's some amazing stuff of people just being as creative as they can about Christmas or the solstice or Hanukkah or any sort of winter holiday, as long as you're taking some strange and unusual approach to it. And I do that every year now. So if you got any writers listening, I'd love to have you participate next time. The one this year, it's closed, but it'll be coming out around the 20th of December. But the ones from the last couple of years they're amazing. And you even win money prizes. So I've got a Patreon page and take donations and stuff like that. But most of the money goes towards prizes for the short story contest. But that has become my absolute favorite thing to do, just to see the amazing creative stuff that people come up with for that. I mean, every year I'm turning away stories that I absolutely love. And I feel bad that I have to, but there's only so much time in a podcast and that I can put on a show. But yeah, that's the best thing. That truly, of all the stuff that's fun that I do and the history and everything, that's great. But the short stories that people write, and they're very short. They're like max 350 words. So we're talking flash fiction. It's fun. It's some great stuff.
Hey, cool. So go to weirdchristmas.com to find all of these.
It is all there.
Things that Craig's been talking about. And we've taken an hour to do the first two, so we don't have to rush, but we'll kind of get on our sleigh and go sprightly through the second choices for each of you guys. So I believe now Craig is going to let us know his third choice.
All right, third. I'll be quicker, I promise. So time
it's me commenting on all the stuff that's dragging on.
Well, this one's easier. Poop. Christmas poop. So especially in Spain and Catalan, there are a lot of actually poop-related traditions. The first one is called the caganer. And the caganer is a very common thing in nativity scenes in northern Spain. And northern Spain is mostly Catholic. But in the northern part, which is still, somewhat Moorish, somewhat Gypsy, somewhat, a mix of all different kinds of things in the Catalonian regions, the caganer is a figure that's very common in nativity scenes who's got his pants down around his ankles and he's taking a poop. And this is just a normal part of nativity scenes in that part. And you can buy the caganers for your nativity from all sorts. It's a huge sort of statement thing that people do. Like, it's politics. Like, there's tons of Obama or Hillary or Trump or Biden or Romney or whatever guys pooping. So that can be your caganer that year. Or it can be local politicians, or it can be pop culture figures. But if you look up caganer and any name that you can imagine, you will find an addition to your nativity scene that no one else will quite understand.
Wow.
So that's one.
Wow.
But that's not the only thing. So there's also, it's called the poop log. And it has different names, and it's not that kind of poop log. It's actually a wooden log. And it's called different things, like the Tio de Danal is one name for it. But what it is it's a hollowed out log that's usually on one side, it'll have a little face, and it'll wear like a little red cloak behind it. And it's a bit like a piñata. They fill it up with candy, and then on Christmas,
candy. Okay, good.
yes, you fill it up with candy, and then the whole idea is that on Christmas Day you get to empty it out and eat all the candy that's in there. But before you do that, there's a very traditional song that the translation is basically poop log poop, poop log poop, and then there's a whole bunch of other verses that go through it. But yeah, it's the pooping log is where kids in that part of Spain will get their candy. So, so something about that part of Spain has a whole lot of Christmas poop traditions.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. The first one, the Caganer, kind of sounds similar to the Calvin pissing on Ford icon or logo.
Yeah, what I've always thought of it as is that, they got, way back in history, they were forced to convert. That part of the country was forced to convert to Christianity. And I've always seen it as kind of the idea of like, yeah, okay, we'll accept your religion, but every year we're still going to take a big steaming crap on your God, right? It's like at least there's that little bit of resistance going on every time. But the poop log, that one I have no idea where it came from.
The poop log sounds like something that John Crickfaloozy would have come up with on Ren and Stimpy.
Wow. Oh yeah, like powdered toast or something. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun. Okay. Wow. That's really cool. Is there more poop stuff or just those two things?
Those are the two that I know of, but I'm always expecting to find more.
The number two. when you're counting your poops, you don't go past two. Okay. All right. Richard or Michael, what's your third?
Our third choice is, it's nothing specific. It is just that feeling when you go over to someone's, a new family or a new friend's house to spend Christmas, and they all have their individual ways in which they do the same basic things. It's like it's the experience of experiencing someone's Christmas traditions, and you're like, I recognize all this, but I don't understand it necessarily. It's like going to someone's house and you're playing under their Monopoly house rules.
Yeah.
You know exactly what's going on. You're like, okay, so you guys, you open up you do your stockings before Christmas Day. Okay. Mm-hmm. Christmas night with the stockings. Okay. I get, sure. And you just kind of have to roll with it. And you bake cookies every Christmas Day. You bake them. Huh. That day, huh? You open up one gift at night before, or all of them before. I think that there's a very interesting thing with Christmas is that it's so shared, but each family treats it so differently. And sometimes it's just the tradition, like an individual family's like traditional Christmas is onto themselves. Like when, in the pre-COVID times when we saw people for Christmas, like at the end of the night, we just played Trivial Pursuit. And it was just something that we did every Christmas. I don't know when it started. I don't know how long it's been going on. It's just the thing that you're just waiting for, like pie to come out and coffee to come out. And it's like, all right, time to play Trivial Pursuit. Mm-hmm. I don't expect any other families to do that, but it's just the thing that you know is happening. And I think that Christmas just lends itself to have all of these shared items, but they're so done individually. And I think that's just super weird. It's just, like Monopoly, like, okay, so when you land on jail, you get all the money that's been put into the middle of the pot.
Yeah, what?
Who made up that rule? But then you just accept it.
Yeah.
But then you just accept it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my two that I had to deal with when I first started going over to Sarah's family's house, which is where we traditionally spend Christmas, is they do Christmas pajamas. So Christmas Eve, you do a pajama swap or a gift exchange, which I just found really weird because I have like two pairs of pajamas that I rotate out of. And the second one,
too, if it's like your kids or your family, but yeah, when it's other people you didn't grow up with to have to swap pajamas.
Yeah, it's very strange. And then the second one is that they open their presents one at a time. So like you hand it out and okay, it's Jenny's turn to open up a present, then it's Sarah's turn. And in my family, it was just the kids woke the parents up, and then it was the 5-minute like orgy
A melee,
of
yeah.
opening things,
Yeah.
which I think my parents liked because they just wanted to get back to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was done. You 5 minutes in, you're done. You're playing with your toys.
Yeah.
And so that's why I loved Michael's idea for this, because going to a in-law or whoever it happens to be, it's just very discombobulating.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of it also being like, it's like you're in prison, and it's just like, that's not the way we do things here. There's always just like some older family members like, you're new around here,
Yeah.
and you have no idea. We don't do things things like that way.
Yeah. That is fascinating, because as a young person, I do remember just assuming that our Christmas was the way all Christmas was, and then realizing other people had different traditions, and there's no announcement. It's not like you're going to get an agenda when you hang out with your family for their versions of your extended family or whoever for their versions of the holidays. So you just kind of have to roll with it. Yeah, and it's so funny. Yeah, it's like the same thing, but it's just kind of mixed up a little. That's great.
Yeah, I was an only child, and so Christmas morning was always pretty short because it was just me. But I remember the first year at my wife's family's house, they called them stocking stuffers, but it's basically everybody would get everybody like a whole bucket of little tiny, like teeny tiny $1 or $2 gifts, or, bottle openers or whatever. And then they had 1 or 2 gifts. But it was the same thing where everybody had to open them one at a time. And so it was like, well, we're going to be here for about 2 or 3 hours. Well, everybody opens their bottle opener that the last 2 people also got, and we're all going to ooh and ah. And then I'm going to have to do it and act surprised. And we're going to move very slowly. It was an experience. Yeah.
The one bizarre thing I don't remember, I remember seeing it starting in the mid 80s or 90s, is the double income, no kids Christmas Day. It's usually the couple jogging on Christmas. You're driving from one parent to another's or something like that, and you see people out exercising on Christmas Day. I remember as a kid seeing that going, what the hell is going on? Oh, so bizarre. All right. So that takes us to Craig's final choice.
Okay, my last one is my favorite Christmas movie. And unless you're a fan of Mystery Science Theater, you probably don't know what this was. If you were a fan of Mystery Science Theater, you absolutely know what this was. But in 1959, there was a Mexican movie called Santa Claus that came out. And it breaks every rule you probably know about Santa Claus, because Santa Claus does not live in the North Pole. He lives in a cloud in a castle in the sky. He spends most of the movie fighting the devil instead of doing whatever it is Santa Claus does otherwise. And it's a surreal movie. It's all about sort of Santa and his group of little international kids who are watching a very small number of, I think it's like 4 kids basically in Mexico, who seem to hold the fate of Christmas in their hands, of whether or not the poor little girl is going to steal a doll, or whether or not these 3 little boys are going to be convinced by the devil to actually throw some rocks or not. It's campy. It's strange. The guy who plays Santa is weird. The reindeer, or just everything about it is off. Like, the reindeer aren't real reindeer. They're wind-up reindeer who have this incredibly odd mechanical sort of routine that they go through when you have to watch them, that lasts for far too long. Characters just sit there and laugh on screen for I don't know how long. It's a fever dream. It's absolutely a fever dream of a movie. But I love it. And I found out I've got a buddy who lives in Mexico City, was raised in Mexico City. And when we first started talking about Christmas the first time, I was like, oh, you have to see this thing. And to him, it was like, oh yeah, that's on every year. That's like on network TV. That's just one of the like Christmas specials. And it blew my mind because to me, everything about this movie is just horribly, horribly wrong. And to him, it was just part of the season. But yeah, Mystery Science Theater did it, and then all the different offshoots of Mystery Science Theater, like Riff Tracks and Cinematic Titanic and everything. There's all kinds of versions of the show, but it is absolutely something you should hunt down and experience. Yeah.
When you first brought up MST3K, of course, my immediate thought was Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. That was the Joel version. The Santa Claus one was in the Mike era.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Wow, that's a fun choice, and I really, I have to say, Craig, one of the fun things about having guests come on is obviously the new blood, the new energy, and the new point of view to share. One of the sad things is just seeing them clobber up on Michael and Richard because often they're brought on because they're an expert and having such enthusiasm and a depth of experience with the topic that Richard and Michael are kind of like the little kid who's swinging at the bully, but the bully's arm has extended far enough and is holding the kid's head, so no punches are landing. So
we're very aware of this abusive relationship that we're in, but we're unwilling to get out of it.
Yeah, okay.
Mostly it's just the tradition of it,
Yeah. So wow, some really great choices, but there is still time for Richard and Michael to send another salvo of holiday interesting observation at us. What do you got?
Sure. Here's a little bit of holiday cheer for you. And this is something that I thought didn't exist until about this holiday season last year, which is the idea of someone buying a car for their spouse and having it delivered to their house with a giant red bow on it. Who does this?
Yeah.
I've always wanted to know that too. I always wanted to know, do you have to buy the bow separately, and how much does it cost?
No, the bow is an add-on by the dealership, and I know this because my previous job that I worked at was for a large-scale printing company, and over the holiday season, pretty much 90% of what they were doing over the month leading up to Christmas was making these bows for different dealerships.
Is that right? Wow.
So apparently this is a thing that actually happens. And yes, it's just something that's provided as sort of a incentive for you to gift a car to your husband or wife.
Mm-hmm. I have only seen commercials where this happens. I've never heard of it really happening.
I assumed I don't know anyone who's done this. But I had assumed that it was the same thing. It was just something that capitalism is trying to force you to do that we're all smart enough to kind of figure out not to do.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently it's a thing.
Wow.
And if my wife, if Sarah if I were to wake up on Christmas morning and she'd go, "Hey, look outside," and there was a car with a bow on it, I would be incredibly pissed.
Oh yeah.
I mean, right? Exactly.
You didn't buy the whole thing. I've got payments, right? Yeah.
You just bought me 36 months of payments on a car that I didn't get to test drive that I may or may not like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Yeah, and we're not all that family that. What's the one where she buys him a watch and he's like, "Great, and guess what? I've got two things outside," and they walk outside of this house that's obviously some weird, named architect designed thing and something else, and he buys the two things, and it's beyond unrealistic.
Mm-hmm. I whenever I see, like I said, I assumed it was just the auto industry kind of trying to push this thing, but I feel bad. I also feel like that whenever I see somebody giving somebody a kitten or a puppy. It's like I gotta take care of this thing for 20 years. What if I didn't want that? Yes, it's cute, but come on.
Now, if your spouse has been saying, "Boy, I'd really like to have a dog," or "I'd really like to have a cat," okay, maybe I can see that.
Yeah.
Or if your spouse has said, "Boy, that new Mercedes S-Class is that's really good,"
mm-hmm.
maybe I could see it.
Yeah.
But
Isn't there one where like the parents have given, like the only one I could believe is one where parents have like put a bow on top of their old station wagon and they're like giving it to their son or something? Like that one I can believe. Like that seems
Yeah.
like an excellent use of the bow.
yeah, that seems like that's something my parents would have done. It's like, oh, you want an 86 Chrysler? There you go. Perfect.
It wasn't my gag, but I do think a comedian did talk about just buy the big bow and put it on the driveway and then bring your spouse out there or girlfriend and cover her eyes and then say, honey, take a look. Oh my God, they stole it. I had this beautiful car here and somebody stole it. And then you don't have to buy it. So gentlemen, thank you so much for all your great suggestions for topics. Michael and Richard, boy, this was, hey, valiant try, you guys. Really great job with your choices. Christmas music, celebrating St. Nicholas's Day and Zwarte Piet, other people's Christmases and how bizarre they can be, and the car with the bow and how ridiculous and conspicuously spending that is. But I got to say, you've been trounced by the weird Christmas maestro, Craig. So these are the choices that are going on the Mount Rushmore of weird Christmas. Christmas mushrooms, Christmas postcards, and how bizarre they can be. It's dead birds especially. Poop in both forms that it comes. And then Santa Claus, the Mexican movie that is a tradition there, but it's bizarre here.
Look, I've never been so happy to be beaten like a drum. This was great. So.
But I have devoted more hours than my wife is happy with to Christmas history, so it's a victory.
It finally paid off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally,
yeah,
after all these years.
The cost is felt in many parts of my life.
You'll get the certificate in the mail in 8 to 12 weeks.
Yes, the crown,
shipping and handling,
gilded crown that you have to wear,
and a pair of pajamas.
Yeah. So, dude, thank you so much, everyone listening. We enjoy you listening throughout the year, but we hope you have some time off during the holidays to sit down and obviously enjoy the holiday season with your family and whatever tradition you have. But we appreciate you and value you and all that stuff. And you are our gift. So this has been the Mount Rushmore of Weird Christmas. I, as always, am Jeff.
I'm Richard.
I'm Michael.